You dim the lights, crank the volume, make some popcorn, and settle in for a night of curdled skin, severed limbs, shrill screams, and visceral, bloodthirsty violence. I could be describing any horror movie here, but of course I'm talking about 1974's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, there are a lot of reasons why Leatherface's first appearance was enthralling and bone-chilling, the splatter horror of meat hooks and chainsaws being an obvious one, but what was especially unnerving about the movie, especially in the 70s, was how human its monsters were. Leatherface and his family weren't supernatural beings like Freddy or Jason. They were thinking and feeling, but the extent of their evil was inexplicable. It's this presentation of conscious, man-made cruelty which makes it such an effective horror. There's no reasoning with them, no potential for mercy, but because you know that there should be, that they should be capable of it, a viewer's sense of dread gets to gnaw and never be satisfied. Resident Evil 7, up until it gets bad 2/3 in, has a similar focus. Koshi Nakanishi has gone on the record as looking to use 70s and 80s horror films to inspire the feel of the Baker estate. But just how the Texas Chainsaw Massacre isn't just scary because the characters are pursued by Leatherface, Resi 7 isn't just scary because Jack Baker can knock down walls with a shovel. Okay, it's definitely a contributing factor, but it's also scary because the game feels hungry, and its opening moments have an emphasis on making the visuals feel multi-sensory. You can almost taste and smell the decay the house feels so fully realised. The threat of Jack, Marguerite and Lucas is oppressive because the player can end up convinced that the estate itself is in cahoots with these crazy hillbillies. So today, we're going to examine its opening, and I'm going to do it without gluing the 16th and 20th letters of the alphabet together or discuss how it adapts crap. This is the first 10 minutes.
Hey baby, I just wanted to send a quick hello and I love you.
The horror kicks right in with the uncanny valley of Mia's face. Okay, that's obviously not purposeful, but it needed to be said. What is important though is how it detaches the player from our expected gameplay by opening with a screen rather than a standard cutscene or introduction to Ethan himself. Resident Evil 7's photorealism is there to make everything seem familiar so it can be twisted and torn apart later, and despite the jarring recreation of Mia Winter's face, it is, for the most part, really effective. The way it zooms out, the clean white screen and blue sky clashing with the darkness of Mia's reality, her hands covered in blood, reinforces the grittiness of her situation. Opening with Mia like this engenders some real sympathy for her. We are encouraged to align with Ethan and go to hunt for her. As an opening, this is effective, but yes, I am firmly in the camp that Mia, controlled or not, loses all of my sympathy later when she chops off her hand, but here, it's suitable build-up. When we transfer to Ethan Winters, the most important thing to note is that he's just some guy. Every Resident Evil character up until now has had some form of combat experience, be it as part of a Special Forces police unit, a mercenary for hire, or hell, even just a rookie cop ready for his first day on the job. They've all fired a gun before the game opens. Well, with the exception of Claire Redfield, but come on, Chris was her brother. It's likely he took her shooting long before the events of Raccoon City. Ethan is meek, as we can see from the way he talks, nervously to his friend. He's dressed in a white office shirt on his way to a dirty swamp in Louisiana, searching for his missing wife. He is as unprepared a protagonist as you could possibly get for this story. The colour palette is worth acknowledging as well. Resident Evil 7 vomits up browns, off-colour greens and pale, sickly yellows everywhere we go. Even the inside of Ethan's car is brown and the exterior is beige. As Ethan climbs out of the car and muscles through the woods, the whole countryside seems diseased, and that's purely because of the way colours are used. It paints even the cleanest of environments as grimy and thick. The straightforward path we need to follow is huddled by trees and overgrown foliage, meaning it's impossible to miss the Baker estate as we run into it. It's a really neat piece of level design, how the path to the left is hidden from view but still accessible, and because of how the lighting engine casts heavy shadows in the centre of the gate, it's difficult to see the chain wrapped around the bars before we even interact with it. Resident Evil 7 is covered in these little details, and it's some of the most effective cultivation of first-person horror I've ever seen. Even the scripted moments, of which there are many, feel organic because of this attention to detail. Our first sign that there's something actively wrong is when we find the sewer gator's van, abandoned in this open space. Inside, we see a pamphlet, and turning it over is an invitation to both Ethan and the player, pulling a trick from Resident Evil 1's opening. Join us. And just off to the side, through a warped gate that looks like it's been ripped open, another. Accept her gift. There's no music, similar to the opening of Resident Evil 4 and 2, so Ethan's footfalls and the rustling of trees play tricks on the player, teasing us that something might be watching us in the surrounding trees, inaccessible from our path, and casting a looming darkness ahead to discourage the player from wanting to test the invisible walls. There's no life in the path aside from crows and bugs, two creatures notorious for connoting death and disease. Despite the wind, the forestry is deathly still. Coming up on a ledge, we get the closest thing to a Resi monster reveal in 7's first 10 minutes. A large man, bathed in grey, absently patrolling the pathway and disappearing behind a log. He doesn't acknowledge the player, doesn't even see us, but purely because of the signs we've seen before, Mia's ominous message at the start, and of course the abandoned van, we know to keep our distance. Not far off from him is our first piece of gore. Dismembered pieces of a deer are strung up among barbed wire. The positioning looks almost ceremonial, with the legs split out almost symbolically. These creatures haven't been killed for their meat. It looks like an unnatural, purposefully barbarous kill. And making Ethan crawl underneath it is just another example of the game having some grisly fun with the player. The fact that our opening area is the guest house rather than the estate itself is actually really clever. Where the estate is reminiscent of a mansion with its wide spaces and almost regal architecture, the guest house is tight, claustrophobic, and most of all, is falling apart, setting up a very particular first impression to be toyed with later when we explore the family's true home. The fact that the guest house is desolate and shoddy means that it's a horrifying shock when we learn that the Bakers can think and scheme, so much so that they're caring for such a large house surprisingly well, adding to the threat they cast. The darkness of the estate is what's most important here. Outside is bathed in an ill, pale light. Inside, you need to rely on your torch because the windows are, for the most part, blocked off. Seeing the wardrobe at the end of the long corridor tutorializes to us that fetch puzzles will dominate our progression, and we need to keep an eye out for tools and items as we explore. Unfortunately, this also means that when we enter the kitchen, we firmly believe that we need to open drawers, pots, and fridges just to be safe, meaning the game can hide its gruesomeness in plain sight. A crow is battered in the microwave, the fridge is overflowing with rot and mould, the goob slopping onto the floor. The pot on the kitchen table has cockroaches hiding inside, feasting on ambiguous stew. This one in particular is one of my favourite little details from the opening. Remember it, we will return to it later. But what is most important to note about the guest house is how simple and unthreatening it once appeared to be. The Spencer mansion groaned and creaked under its pretension, statues and puzzles around every corner, but the guest house seems like it was, once, a dinky little living space. Whilst this version of the guest house isn't exactly recognisable to us, the idea of what it once was is, and we can see hints of it. A picture of a family, a kitchen which was once used for cooking and eating together. Someone lived here. But now, just like the Bakers themselves, it's beginning to decay, and that's what's scariest of all. We find a videotape, not a DVD or USB, in the attic, and placing it in the, of course, VHS player, we transition from playing as Ethan to playing as Clancy, the cameraman for the sewer gators. The first thing of note is how the game changes the field of view. When you're playing as Ethan, you have a standard first-person camera, just open enough that the controls feel responsive and you can drink in a standard view of each room you walk into. Not only that, but Ethan's field of view sways ever so slightly, adding to that nauseousness of yellow colour palette and rotting gore that we find. but playing as Clancy, the camera zooms in just a little bit more to replicate the sense of looking through a camera, filming the sequence we're about to see. This, combined with the compressed sound design and the crackling filter placed over the visuals, is here to do one thing to our player psychology. It detaches us from the experience of the sewer gators.
Fuck me. I was an anchor, you know?
Weekend sub, Pete. Not anchor.
What's that?
Just like with Resident Evil 1's presentation of stars, Pete, Andre, and Clancy are cocky and skeptical as they explore the abandoned guest house. There's a couple of decent little jokes in here. They have their guard down. They care about getting the footage and making a good show than any potential threat or horror that lurks here. But in classic Resident Evil fashion, our confident little trio have their jokes and laissez-faire attitude stripped down to the muscle after 5 minutes in the house. I particularly love the fact that Clancy can examine the same kitchen pot that Ethan can. When we lift the lid, there are no cockroaches, but the goop inside stays the same, teaching the player that the horrible brown mush that Ethan found wasn't a soup or stew which had rotted over time. It looked like this when it was fresh. The bakers are cooking and eating something sickly. I'm not the first to note the homage to the Blair Witch Project when Clancy finds Andre in the basement. What initially looks like him standing, his back turned, slowly swaying, is quickly revealed to be a grotesque death. Andre had actually had his chin impaled on a rusted metal hook. And I'm sorry, this is minging. Absolutely minging. There's no clever piece of analysis to be found here. It's our first human death of the game, and Resident Evil 7 pulls no punches. The blood dribbling from his eyes, the fact that he looks drained of blood already, and of course the second view of Jack Baker, his face and his voice hidden from us, just reinforces the barbaric threat of the Bakers. Using the recording of the sewer gators to reveal the fireplace passageway is neat, and again teaches the player that there are going to be odd tricks to navigating the estate. Secret passages, secret switches, the whole hog. The ladder cracks underneath us, trapping Ethan in the basement and forcing the player to journey deeper whether they want to or not. Our curiosity is rewarded when the filthy water we need to wade through burbles like there's something hiding underneath, but it's just the decomposing body of Andre. Ah, cool. 7's hunger for the player's fear becomes all too clear as we need to get up close and personal with this husk. We haven't encountered our first monster yet, and the slow burn of Resi 7 makes it stand apart from the others. And as our 10 minutes come to an end, moments from meeting Mia, we're left with one clear thought. Resident Evil 7 is septic, and it relishes it. Thanks for watching. Video 7 of 7 is complete, but I've got something a little sillier releasing this Thursday before Resident Evil 8 comes out. A video where I explain the entire Resident Evil lore to my friend who has never played the games. It was a good time, we got very drunk, and I think he might have made me hate one of my favourite franchises, so... Anyway, if you liked what you saw, drop a like or a comment or hell, even subscribe, and as always, take care.